Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Hello and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective, and this is my co-host and head practitioner, Shannon Callery. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
So I'm first going to apologize. I am a little under the weather. Look, you can tell it in my voice. It may or may not get worse as we go. So just full disclosure, I got some sinus stuff going on that was triggered by our topic today, which is we're going to talk today about parasites and specifically doing parasite work around the full moon protocols. What does this look like? Why do we do it? How do we do it? And then some of the things that we can experience during this time. And this is a big thing that we recommend for our clients as maintenance. We will do with some clients, and it really depends on the person. Sometimes we will do this kind of work while we're working with a client. We definitely recommend it after the fact, after we've done a lot of the more intensive type work as kind of maintenance. And we'll talk more about why and how we do that and preparation and post-care and what actual protocols can look like.
Yeah. And what perfect timing. I mean, we were going to talk about something else, but, Megan's doing some full moon work right now. It's the last full moon of the year. This just seemed like the perfect time to talk about this, and how fitting that, not that it's a good thing that you're experiencing some negative symptoms, but I think it's really going to add to this episode.
Yeah, I think so too. And I've done a lot of these. This is my second one this calendar year. And this is a totally different one than I've ever experienced. And certainly we can talk about, physically some of the things that I'm experiencing, and also, some of the energetic and emotional pieces that really go into just some full moon work and parasite work in general. So yeah, I'm not, I don't feel great. And I also do think, there's some benefit in sharing more about how I'm feeling and what has come up for me during this full moon protocol. And certainly we can talk about, previous ones as well. But we're not immune to side effects either, even though we've been doing this work for a long time. So and we'll talk about that and some of the side effects or things that can come along with it is one of the reasons why we don't casually and just willy-nilly recommend doing full moon work. One, nothing can happen. And, if you were in my shoes and had never done any sort of full moon work, you might be a little scared, a little nervous about what may be happening versus me, which I kind of already know. Not that it makes it much better. I still don't feel great. And I do also understand, have some understanding of what is going on. And that brings a little bit of relief and some comfort as to what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling, how to care for myself.
Yeah, and that, we do have a handful of people who inquire just about doing parasite work specifically, or like a short, full moon challenge stuff. And it's not our favorite thing to start with. If you are someone if you have any type of big issues going on, I'll say any autoimmunity issues, if you've dealt with if you've had a really sensitive stomach, you're super sensitive to a lot of foods, lots of supplements, maybe you have some other diagnoses going on. I would not recommend doing a full moon challenge, because if that's the case, you're going to need to do some deeper work, which we'll talk about here. But that is where we see things go wrong. If you just jump in and do some sort of really intense parasite work without doing any prep work around it, maybe some deeper toxin stuff, that's when we see things go a little bit sideways. So, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about doing some sort of parasite work, short time frame, if you have any big issues going on, we really don't recommend it. But if you're someone who generally feels like pretty good as a whole, maybe you have like just a little bit of bloating going on, maybe a little bit of gas, like nothing else big, then I would say with the prep work, that would be a good candidate to do some of this parasite work.
Yeah, and just because of the work that we do and have done ourselves, so we work mostly with people who have a lot of chronic issues going
Yeah.
that have been going on for months, for years, for decades in certain cases. And this is never, for reference, never something that we do with clients. We never just jump in to a full moon protocol. We always do prep work and also just bigger parasite work, which I will talk about here as well. But bigger parasite work before we do any sort of full moon work. And once again, if you have a significant parasite overload, and if you're curious about more as to what that looks like, go back and listen to our actual parasite episode. I think that will shed a lot of light and give a lot of education around just parasite overload in general. But it can be a lot. It can be a lot. And also the body cannot be ready for this. And it's also something, when we do this ourselves, we still do, at least for me, I spent about a week doing some prep work, week and a half preparing to go into this full moon protocol. And once again, we'll talk about this, and then doing the full moon protocol for me, I'm doing this for a week, which is pretty common to do it about 7 days. If someone has maybe has some really significant parasite load or is very sensitive, we may only do 3 or 5 days versus the full 7. And then there's also post-care work that is done. And all 3 are really important. And I would say all 3 are important, whether you are doing, just a week-long kind of protocol, or if you're also doing kind of bigger gut work, bigger parasite work. It's kind of a similar thing, except on a bigger scale that we're doing as far as, a lot of the prep work. And then we get into just parasite specific work in the gut, along with yeast, fungus, bacteria. And then we get into systemic parasites. Once again, parasites don't just live in our gut. They can be other places throughout our entire body. If you have endometriosis, PCOS, like some big hormonal stuff, parasites are often the bigger root cause of some of these things, often, not necessarily always, but often. And, people do this work. We see people do this work so wrong all of the time in not doing the preparation and or the post-care work. And, I talked to someone pretty recently who does full moon work every single month, just like every month, which just blows my mind. And I just can't imagine putting my body through this every single month, in a way that's really effective. And, and then you're constantly killing, which isn't great either. We shouldn't be constantly killing things in our gut. If we have to do that, there's a bigger issue going on. And the question is, okay, well, why do we have to keep doing this? For maintenance, we're doing this 1 to 3 times a year. And for us, we kind of recommend this range depending on your level of exposure. For me, this is the first year I've only done it twice. But also this is the first year where I haven't lived with a dog the entire year who licks me on my face. Now I do live with a cat who does not lick me on my face, but I am around the cat quite a bit. And I do eat pork on occasion. I do have sushi on occasion, which, once again, this is just about exposure. Like, what is your exposure level? And that's how we kind of determine this, 1 to 3 kind of mark intention.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because I just got a dog, and one of my things is I let him lick my hands, my arms, my feet, whatever. I'm not really big on letting him lick my face just because I'm trying to limit that exposure slightly. But yeah, if you're someone who, you have pets, we can get parasites so many ways, from food, water, there's just so many ways that we're exposed to them. If you're someone who travels often, especially out of the country, again, these are things to consider for how often you would want to do it throughout the year. I typically do it, twice a year. Granted, I have had other things going on that kind of paired with it that needed more work. So it really depends on your situation. And again, like if you're generally someone who feels pretty good the majority of the time, then this you may have some things come up, some different symptoms when you actually do it, but you should be in a decent place to do it. And when we talk about prep work, really what we mean is supporting your liver, making sure those drainage detox pathways are open before we go in and start doing like a bunch of intense killing. So for me, what I like to do, and this is regular practice for me, maybe not as much the week before the full moon work, but on a general scale, like doing Epsom salt baths, castor oil packs, coffee enemas, or something that I really like to do. I kind of amp up that extra liver support care the week before I go in and do that full moon work, just to make sure my body is, those drainage pathways are really open, and to make it so I don't experience, or hopefully don't experience, such intense symptoms when I do the actual full moon challenge.
Exactly. Yeah. And really this is about symptom management and
Mhm.
also making sure, when parasites die, they can get stuck in our body. When they die, they also release toxins, more toxins into our body. And if your body, specifically your drainage pathways, are not in a great place, this can pretty horribly wrong. And once again, like I did the prep work, and I'll talk about my prep work here in just a moment. And I got sick. I'm experiencing side effects. I also go a little intense, and push my body just a little bit during this time. And, this isn't my first rodeo. I
Yep.
know and can acknowledge and can tune into my body and acknowledge, like, all right, what is mine? What are symptoms I'm hearing? What are things that are from the actual parasites? And we'll talk about all of that too. But my prep work, yeah, it's largely the same. For me right now, what I have access to, I have access to. So like I got in the sauna a couple extra times. I did the first day I did do a coffee enema. I did, yeah, the castor oil packs are another big one that I have access to. So I would, usually I'll do like maybe 2 days on a regular basis of some sort of liver detox pathway support work, whether that's sauna, castor oil pack, coffee enema, whatever it may be. And just the week before doing this, really stepping that up instead of like once or twice a week, doing like 4 to 6 times a week and really giving myself some time. I also like to add in a product from Cellcore, and we will be talking about Cellcore products quite a bit today. And if they are not available, generally speaking, to the general public, if you need access to these products or would like access to these products, please reach out to us directly. You can DM us on any social media platform. You can email us at info@trifectacollective.net. We can get you access. We can't just publicly give it away, though. There are
Yep.
rules and restrictions due to the intensity, by and large, of these products is one of the big reasons why these are not accessible to the general population. Um,
Yeah.
it also kind of depends on where you are. Some people have an easier access than others. In the US, it can be a little challenging to get access to these products. The US and Canada, if you're outside of the US and Canada, sometimes it can be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will add in like an advanced head cut, especially in the evening, just like one before bed. Sometimes I add in a little bit of KL support, which is kidney and liver support, and just like a little bit extra to make sure that I'm really prepared. Some of this also depends on what has my stress been recently? How has my sleep been recently? Other things that really impact your body's ability to naturally detoxify and get these things out. Going into this, I was a little bit stressed. I also had just started working out again. Um, and I had there's a lot of moving pieces right now. So I wanted to make sure I added in a little extra, which is why I added in the advanced head cut, and the KL support a little bit extra than I normally do. Once again, just preparing my body kind of going into this, hoping to mitigate as many side effects as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we can't prevent it because this stuff is also linked to, we've talked about this many times before, but parasites hold on to emotions. We also can hold on to different emotions in different organs of the body. And this work can really stir some of that up. So it's kind of a blend of like physical symptoms happening. We might be feeling some emotional things come up. One of the things that I really try and prioritize when I am doing parasite work or full moon work is I will either do some energy work on myself. That's kind of a new thing this year that I've gotten into, or I will get outside help. So sometimes I'll do a session with Megan. She'll help me out. Sometimes I see my emotion and body code practitioner, a massage therapist, craniosacral therapist. I just make sure I have access to someone else for help because a lot of times for me personally, big emotional things typically come up when I do this parasite work and I need help getting through it. When you're doing something intense like this, it's not always the easiest to stay regulated in your nervous system. So just making sure you have some sort of outside help, like even a therapist to talk through whatever comes up can be really beneficial throughout this.
Hugely beneficial. And yeah, for me right now, that's always the biggest thing for me is, okay, well, what emotions are going to come up for me? I just did journey work 6 weeks ago, had some extra emotions come up, which is really common around week 4, uh, post journey space. And even within the last week, I've had some big emotional things come up. And so making sure, yeah, just prioritizing some mindfulness. And once again, it's easier now with extended experience to recognize, okay, what emotions are actually mine and what's coming up because of the parasite work.
Yeah.
And it's not always possible to distinguish. And the more you tune in with your body, sometimes it is possible. And I know for me, a lot of times, once again, I go pretty aggressive on my parasite work when I do full moon work. And I can recognize like, okay, parasites have officially taken over my brain. Brain is really no longer mine. And extra anxiety and looping thoughts and past traumas and all patterns can absolutely come up. And once again, like I've just done this work enough where I can recognize it doesn't make it easy,
Mm-hmm.
and I can recognize, and I'll always let my partner know, like, hey, we had my new partner and I had a conversation about this before going into this of like, please just give me some grace going into the next week. Like, I don't know what may or may not come up. My brain may not be mine at some point, and just like being aware of that. And so having
Mm-hmm.
communication around that also takes a lot of stress off of it. In case things do come up, there's a lot of extra emotion, like things like,
Oh yeah, definitely. Super helpful to have that conversation and let your family members know, your partner, whatever your life looks like. It's worth it because for most people this will stir things up emotionally. Getting irritable is for feeling frustration, anger, whatever. It's pretty common during this. And for reference to like, I'm not even doing full moon work right now. I'm doing it next month. And I think my body knows that. But during the full moon, this past one, I felt so agitated, irritable. And it took a second for me to realize, like, what's going on? And to have that conversation with my partner and be like, oh, okay, I know what's happening right now. So, and that's another thing to pay attention to as well. You might get a little bit of info, like, if your symptoms, if your emotions, physical symptoms get flared up during the full moon, that might be a good indication that you need to do some full moon work or look deeper into addressing parasites.
yeah. And let's just talk real quick here about the science behind it, because this
Mhm.
can sound a little out there, a little woo woo. Some of it is, and there is real science that backs this. And so you can go look at the studies. We're not going to share the actual studies, but there are many studies out there that if you go to PubMed, you can find these pretty easily. So what happens naturally in our bodies is around the time of the full moon, our melatonin drops, which means our sleep can get worse. And this doesn't have to be parasite related. This is just like naturally what can happen because our melatonin drops. When our melatonin drops, our serotonin increases. And parasites also have serotonin receptors. So when we get this increase, once again, this like it's just like naturally happening in all of us around the full moon. When our serotonin increases, our parasite activity increases. And, we all have parasites, FYI. So it's never necessarily a bad idea to do some maintenance work around them, whether you have symptoms or not. Because once again, we all have them. And so when the serotonin rises, parasitic activity can increase because of their serotonin receptors and our increase in serotonin. So that's why we do this around the full moon, oftentimes when we're doing like very specific work. Now, when we do like general parasite work with people, we don't necessarily only do this around the full moon. We do it just as we kind of go along. We'll do gut focused parasites, and then we'll do more systemic parasite work. But when we do more of this maintenance or like a little extra parasite work, we do it around the full moon because we know that parasitic activity is going to be a little bit higher, in which case we're just going to be able to kill a little bit more and decrease our overall parasite load back to a pretty manageable place. Once again, we all have parasites and it's fine. It's when they overgrow and or travel to places where they shouldn't be that parasites become a problem. And this protocol, this type of full moon work, can really help to make sure that they stay at a very manageable load for our body.
Yeah, very important to remember that we all do have parasites in our body. It is solely based on what the load looks like and is it manageable to our body, because again, we should be able to process some of these things on our own if our body is in a good state. So we like Cellcore. I've done other parasite work before with non-Cellcore products, and we see the best results with their products. So that's really why we choose these. And, we use them too, like a lot. We use a fair amount of their products because we believe in them, we trust them, and this is what we see the best results with. So, we talked a little bit about the prep work, but I want to talk about what the full moon challenge can actually look like. So there's kind of two different ways that we go about this. If you've never done this before, or you're a person who we've already done like base work with and maybe you kind of struggled a bit throughout it, instead of doing a 7-day full moon challenge, we would most likely have you do a 5-day full moon challenge. Should just something like a little bit shorter and definitely very light. We use Para 1, Para 2, and Para 3 from Cellcore, in addition to most often biotoxin binder. Certainly, if you've never done any of this before, you want to start with biotoxin binder. Don't go for any other binder on their website. This is like the beginner binder, and it's really great for the body regardless. But for dosing, starting pretty low with like 1 capsule of Para 1 and Para 2, oh my God, I just blanked on it. Yeah, twice a day. I have full moon brain right now. And then for Para 3, which is the strongest parasite killing supplement, that one's going to be in a liquid form, so in a tincture. And we have you start really, really low with this. I know it sounds crazy, but anywhere from like 3 to 5 drops for a beginner dose with, after each meal, so 3 times a day. So you're still building on that quantity. That's going to be your recommended starting dose if you are a beginner. Now, and then a biotoxin binder, again, for a starting point, you're going to do 1 with each meal. And the whole point is to increase over that 5 days. It's kind of hard for me to give specifics because this is really going to look different for each person. Maybe we can throw an example up just to, under the, in the links, just so you guys can see what it looks like. But, the more intense stuff, like what Megan is doing right now and what I have done in the past, we're using like 4 full dropperfuls 3 times a day. That is a very, very high amount. And you do not want to start with anything remotely close to that.
No, absolutely not. And I've had people, when we've already done parasite work and we're doing a 3-day full moon challenge or protocol and doing 2 drops of Para 3 3 times a day. So yeah, uh, slower is better until you have a few of these under your belt and you really can understand how your body responds, what can come up, like how good of a place are you in right now. And, for me, for example, this one looks a little bit different than what I've done previously. And I've also had some different symptoms come up than I'm used to. For me, I started with, and I've got like pair one, pair two, just like sitting on my desk to take on empty. We'll also give you some tips and tricks, because there are some things like your sleep can be really impacted, by this, and you can change that with some of the timing of these dosages. But my first day, I do 7 days. My first day I started with just one, pair two, and then 10 drops of pair three. The second day, I doubled that essentially. 2 pair, pair two. Pair three was 20 drops before moving on to three, pair one, pair two. And then pair three is what I forget where it just was. 1 dropper full. I went from 1 dropper full, and then today I'm up to 4 dropper fulls. Today's day 6. So I kind of bumped it up from 1 dropper full to 3 to 4. Based on my symptoms, I'll probably land at 4. A lot of times I will work up to 5. A lot of times too, I will start higher. I did not feel comfortable doing that this time. And part of that's just like listening to my body and asking what it wants or needs. And even today at lunch, like I obviously, once again, I'm sick. So, at lunch, I didn't feel like I could stomach 4 dropper fulls of pair three. So this morning I did 4. At lunch, I did 2. At dinner, assuming I'm doing like okay with where I am now, I'll probably bump back up to 4. But there's a lot of playing around with this. And there's also for me, playing around with dosages of the binder. I still took 5 biotoxin binder at lunch just because I felt like my body needed that many. Those are a lot of pills, just by the way, when you do really high dose. Like, it's just a lot for your body to handle, for your liver to handle. And each product can have their own side effects too, which we'll talk about too. But, that's not a protocol I'd recommend for anyone outside. I have one client who does a similar full moon protocol, and we've also been working together for, I don't know, 2.5, almost 3 years at this point. So, I mean, and we've gone through a handful of these. So it's not her first rodeo. She's done these higher dosages, 1 or 2 other times and has been okay. And so there is like trust just going into this. Also, like, what do you have going on? If people have a lot going on, be careful. Just be careful with how, your dosages and everything. Tuesdays and Wednesdays tend to be my busier days. I've started on a Thursday, I'm ending on a Wednesday. So that also played a role too, versus if I'm starting on like a Monday, it might look a little bit different knowing I need to be quite productive. Like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are when most calls are. So that also plays a role in how we dose. And I'll say, like, even if some people do okay with higher dosages of pair 1, pair 2, it's the pair 3 that is, man, once again, I've done 3 or 4 other parasite protocols that are available and on the market, and they don't compare. They just do not compare. And this goes with a lot of the Cellport products, by the way. And yes, we use them, but there's a reason why we use these products, because in our opinion, there's really nothing else like a lot of their products. Not saying we don't use all of the products. We don't follow their specific, phases and everything, but their products, there's nothing like their binders. Their binders are are selective binders, meaning they only bind up to certain things, which means you can take them with or without food, which is really nice and really amazing. And each one has their own list of things that they bind up. And then, this is a great example. Advanced Head, because one of our favorite products, it's something I always, always, always have on hand. It's so good for the liver, for bile flow. It helps to drain the brain. Like, it's so good. And we've had a handful of clients come to us who have tried other TEDCA products on the market, and it doesn't compare to Cellcore's Advanced TEDCA. And that's just the reality of the situation. And once again, we don't follow everything that they do. We don't use all of their products. And when it comes to killing and binding, we have found nothing else of similar nature on the market. I mean, I've seen homeopathic remedy. I mean, like across the board, I've never found anything that is one as successful at actually doing what it's supposed to do. And two, also things that we can dose low dose and high dose. And it is safe to do and easy to do both, which is also really important.
Yeah, and effective. I mean, that's a huge thing because these supplements are so strong, and we are typically, when we're working with a client, using them at more of like a therapeutic dose. But like, for example, if you've tried other TUDCAs and didn't see much of an effect, and you go and you buy the Cellport TUDCA, I would honestly recommend probably cutting the dose in half, whatever the dose says on the bottle or whatever you felt to start with. Cut it in half. I mean, we have people who open that capsule, mix it in honey. It's very, very bitter. It's not one that you can like mix in water. You probably won't be able to get it down. But just because it is so strong and so potent, like that does mean that we have to be slightly more careful with these products and just more considerate as we're taking them, because we want to make sure we're not throwing the body into some crazy symptom flare up and whatnot.
Yes, because you can absolutely do some damage doing this work as well. One, it can, if you're using very low end products, like you may not be doing literally anything in the body, and you can do some real damage in the body as well if you go too strong. So we're very, very much err on the side of caution when it comes to this. You can definitely work up, and we also know it's not worth it to go too much to do something that's too intense, because the repercussions can be extreme, especially when you're doing parasite work, because of the wide range, which we'll get to, of side effects that you can feel. Especially the mental and emotional piece can be very, 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 very challenging to work through. And we see it in innumerable cases.
I mean, I've experienced this myself, and I've also experienced it with quite a few clients where after we do some of this more ground baseline work, focusing on maybe some bacteria stuff, some general slow parasite killing for a month, whatever it looks like, we will do a full moon challenge most often to try and like wrap things up, make sure everything's cleared out before we go in and do some rebuilding. And we'll know if we need to spend a little bit more time on parasites, depending on how that full moon challenge goes. Of course, like blood work is a factor too. But I have had clients start this and they are so emotional, so irritated, agitated, maybe crying frequently or just feeling like they can't function, extreme fatigue, nausea. If all of that stuff is coming up really intensely, you bet that we're going to back down on those doses, because we want people to be able to function throughout this. Our goal isn't to wipe you out so you have to stay in bed for 7 days. That's not what we want. We're really trying to avoid that. So if something like that is showing up, we are definitely going to back down on those doses just to try and have you finish out that 5 or 7 days and get you through it.
Yeah, and we also keep in mind that one of the reasons why we do this, and I'd say this is like our approach across the board, is our whole goal of doing any of this work is to decrease stress inside and outside of the body, because the body, once again, we firmly believe that the body is designed to heal itself given the right conditions. And if we overstress the body doing some of this work, we can really go backwards in our health and our healing journey, and it can set off some flares and some crazy symptoms that it was just, it was too much for the body. And we have to, yes, we want to do this work, and we have to listen to your body. We this afternoon, like taking only 2 dropperfuls versus 4, that was me listening to my body and being like, I literally cannot stomach forcefuls right now. It is not a good idea. And once again, I'm going to check in with my body before I do my evening dose tonight. Like, do I need to go back down to 2? Do I need to go down to 1? Can I do 4? Like, what does that really look like? And that's a real process in learning and tuning in with your body, which is one of the reasons why there's benefit in working with someone who has that experience, who has that knowledge, and can help you learn how to do this. And also, like, hey, these are the symptoms I'm experiencing. You know, on someone's second day, we have like a check-in day on usually day 2 and day 4. And we want to know how someone's doing, because that's going to tell us, okay, can we push it a little bit more? Do we need to stay where we are? Do we need to a little bit? And that's really, really important to understand, because this work can get too intense for some people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And again, I've been there myself where it's gotten too intense. And it's hard when we have that mindset of like, okay, I just want to get healthy. Like, I want to get this stuff out of my body. I'm going to push through and just deal with it. That's usually a good sign that we need to be doing the opposite. We need to like really back off. And it is a very learned process to be that intuitive with yourself, because we're so used to having that go, go, go. Like, let's push it. Let's do the best we can mindset. And that's not something that you want to do in this type of work. So yeah, it can be really beneficial to work with someone while you're doing this type of parasite work. And it will definitely benefit you if you are able to focus on not only the prep work when we talk about the drainage support and whatnot, the liver support, but also getting your nervous system in check, like the week before, maybe adding in some more whatever mindfulness activities that you like, you know, meditation, nature walks, whatever that looks like for you. It's also super important to amp up that stuff as well.
Yeah. And then I was going to talk about the products here a little bit too, because I think this is important, because we're not just doing parasite work when the way that we do full moon work. We're also doing just general gut maintenance kind of work too. You know, Para One, if you look at Self-Care's website, you can see all of the products, and even if you're not a practitioner, but Para One is a substance called mimosa pudica, and it's basically like a sticky substance that goes along your digestive tract and like helps to pull things out that shouldn't be there, such as dead and or dying things that we don't want just chilling in our body. We want that stuff out. It does some other things too, but that's like one of the main things that it does. And then we have Para 2. Para 2 is really great for bacteria, yeast, fungus, and parasites in the gut. It can also help if you have a history of like H. pylori. It can help address H. pylori. It has some between Para 1 and Para 2. We also have like biofilm disruptors, if you know, so we don't have to take an extra one of those, which is, I think, a huge benefit too, because those are super important. And then Para 3 is more systemic parasites. So it's going to really address parasites across the board. And then we absolutely want to be on a binder. Once again, when parasites die, they release more toxins into the body, and that can be heavy metals, mold, environmental toxins, just like all kinds of toxins, which is where the binder comes in. And biotoxin binder does a lot with specifically ammonia, among other things. And there's a lot of ammonia, a lot of gases that are released oftentimes with any of this type of work. Which kind of leads me into talking about these products. So that's kind of what they do. So we're doing killing work for parasites and also for bacteria, yeast, and fungus as well. So we're kind of doing almost like a sweep, a little mini sweep of the gut, and just keeping things, once again, where they're supposed to be at you know, I don't want to say dosages, at like how much they're supposed to be. I've got, you know, brain fog here a little bit. So I can't think of the exact word I want to use here, but keeping things at the levels we want them in that are good, that are safe for the body. So if you have, you know, for me, like I have a history of SIBO. So like this, in my opinion, keeps a lot of the SIBO at bay, along with, you know, bigger root causes for heavy metals and parasites for me. So it helps really keep a lot of that stuff at bay across the board, which leads us into post-care. So because we are doing parasite work, gut and systemic, and we're doing other type of gut killing, we also want to make sure after we do any sort of killing, and this is huge, and a lot of people miss this step, you have to bring in the good stuff again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. super important piece to this. So we typically recommend taking a good quality probiotic. Our one that we most often recommend is going to be called Restore Flora, which is on our full script. You got to do some sort of rebalancing after this. So typically like 10 days is what we would recommend, just adding in a good quality probiotic to rebuild, replace some of that stuff that may have gotten killed off with the supplements. I also think, and this is kind of case dependent, like if you're not dealing with any other histamine issues, mold stuff, fungal stuff, whatever, adding in some probiotic rich foods is also a good idea as well. So just off the top of my head, I'm thinking like, good quality yogurts, kefir, kimchi, just in as an additional way to add in some of those good probiotics back in your gut.
Yeah. And, I also think like a good prebiotic is never a bad idea, especially when you're doing some, like for me, like doing the more intensive work. I not only want to reintroduce a lot of the good stuff, but I also want to feed it. And I do this through supplements and food. So, I always make sure kind of post care have a lot of the probiotic rich foods. I have a lot of prebiotic rich foods as well. And then I'm also taking typically Restore Flora. We really like that one. It's a really good, pretty gentle, pretty great, like across the board kind of one. Also big fans of Microbiome Labs and a lot of their gut rebuilding and healing products that they have. Really good quality, really good quality supplements. And, for me, so I'm going to be taking Restore Flora. I also do have Megaspore. Given how my body's responding right now, I think that would be too aggressive. It's a much more intensive kind of probiotic. It's great and it can be pretty intense. So I think I'm going to do Restore Flora, and then I always have Mega Pre, which is a prebiotic on hand. I think I do have a prebiotic fiber. Not sure if I'll use that yet, but definitely those two products I'll be using for about 7 to 10 days, give or take. Once again, a lot of this is based on tuning into my body. Do I feel like I need, 1 week? Do I need 2 weeks of this? What am I really feeling inside of my body? To make sure we're getting all the good stuff back in. And having the good stuff back in, once again, is a huge protectant against overall gut overgrowth issues, and immune system issues. And, once again, like I have a history of chronic like EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, and other viral issues, and, autoimmunity. And that just helps protect everything, keep the gut, keep, your brain, your gut's your second brain, keep your immune system, like all of that's just keeping everything in a really good spot, especially because we really don't believe that people need a probiotic all the time, all day, every day. It's really after you've done some work, whether that's with antibiotics, whether that's with, herbals, anything like that, where we want to reintroduce and feed a lot of the good stuff. So we like a probiotic and then a separate prebiotic. A lot of the blends I've seen are pretty garbage, not big fans. My partner was on a Pro and Prebiotic. I had him take that after he did some gut work and just didn't respond very well. We went to Restore Flora and Mega Pre, so much better. So just some things to keep in mind. There's a reason we use the products that we do.
Yeah, and generally, any probiotic that you're going to find at like a basic pharmacy or like a, CVS, Walgreens, unfortunately, those are not going to be the best quality probiotics. And if you really start to do the research on it, it's pretty easy to see why those products aren't super great. So, again, the Microbiome Labs products, I think they have one other probiotic that I have not used from them before, but the Megaspore and the Restore Flora are go-tos. And then I will say one other thing that I don't always add in, but if you feel like the full moon challenge was really stressful on your body, one of the things that stress does is it reduces your stomach acid levels. So another thing that I will sometimes do, not always, is add in a couple days of like HCl supplements with my larger meals just to make sure I'm getting some replenishment in to help, again, protect my body from these harmful things and kind of getting it back into a balanced state.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say I have a long history of low stomach acid, probably goes with the long history of trauma. That is another thing I always have on hand. And I use definitely after full moon, any sort of gut work. I just like to make sure my stomach acid levels are in a good spot, stay in a good spot, because I know that's a huge protectant, especially with the long history of SIBO issues. No, thank you. Would like to never have to deal with that again. So that's just once again like another good protectant to use for, well, yeah, like a week or two, even just a few days, kind of coming out of it. The other product I do also like to have on hand is, and once again, I have a history of constipation. So this is just like always on the forefront of my mind, but Cellcore has another product called Bowel Mover. Senna is one of the ingredients in it. You can get Senna in a variety of other products and teas and things. Once again, I've seen and personally used just about everything on the market to help with constipation. Bowel Mover is unlike anything I've ever used, and I often do have to use some Bowel Mover during my full moon protocols. Para 1 specifically can be very constipating for a lot of people. It definitely does it for me because it's sticky. It slows down motility. And
For
so
sure.
for me, I just kind of play it by ear, the first couple of days to see how I'm doing. Usually once I hit about 3 capsules twice a day of Para 1, I need the Bowel Mover. Just because my body just needs a little bit extra support with that. And sometimes I do need to continue that for a couple days, like 2 or 3 days post full moon work. But it really depends kind of on how I'm feeling and I'll be doing, I was going to do it today, but did not feel great. Um, do another coffee enema, which also kind of just helps clear things out. I've also done colonics after a full moon protocol, and just had that, really just clear things out after any sort of big parasite work. By and large, I don't recommend colonics, but I think after you do some pretty intense killing, especially parasite killing, if you'd like to do that, I don't think it's a terrible option. I think coffee enemas are really good as well, and we will recommend doing coffee enemas during parasite work, during full moon work. But if you've always wanted to try that, like I don't think that's a bad idea. I will say from a colonic perspective, please get one where someone's going to be in the room with you the whole time, and they're going to do a lot of the controlling of the water and the fluid that goes into you and out of you, and will is open to doing like some manual work around the gut. I've done it both ways, and I 100% would never recommend the ones where you just go in and do it by yourself. I had years of coffee enema experience when I did that, and I was still a little traumatized from it and didn't feel like it was by far like not as effective in my opinion. And it was just weird. I was not a fan. So if I ever get a colonic, I always make sure I'll call ahead and be like, hey, how does it work? Does your like colonic therapist stay in there? Are they controlling how much water? I also, just because people who do coffee enemas can typically hold more water, the colonic therapist hydrotherapist, I think that's what their technical
Yep.
title is, they can really feel into how much water's going. Like, is it just going into your large intestine? Is it filling up your large intestine? Is it touching your small intestine? And that makes a difference for me too, in being able to like flush everything out. So, just food for thought there. If you've ever thought about a colonic, now, after doing some parasite work can be a valuable time to do that. Coffee enemas are wonderful though. I'm such a fan. I've seen a lot of things come out during coffee enemas and post full moon enemas. So that is something that if you're open to, never a bad idea. Just be mindful of how intense you're going. And have you done these before? Have you not done them before? Like how intense is your full moon protocol? All that kind of stuff plays a really big role here.
Yeah, and if you do get colonics done, again, suggested with a person in the room, depending on the timing of it too, just remember to take some probiotics, if something like Restore Flora, if you do have that done, because it is going in and kind of flushing things out. So again, we want to make sure we're putting all this good stuff back in. Like even on a regular basis, I typically do coffee enemas 3 to 4 weeks as like a maintenance thing. And even after I do that, I'm still going to add in probiotics just for like a couple days, just to make sure I still have all that good stuff in my gut to keep my body in a good place. And then the other thing I want to mention is if you are someone who deals with constipation, I was unfortunately on the wrong side of this for many years. I had so many practitioners telling me to use coffee enemas to help me go to the bathroom. And that is the wrong way to do this. So the only time you want to do a coffee enema is after you've already had a bowel movement for the day. Do not do this to stimulate a bowel movement. It's got to be the other way around. That's going to be the most beneficial for your body. And then typically you want to try and keep it to, the somewhere around the morning time, because this can be a little bit like activating for the body. It's very on and off for me. Sometimes I will just feel more like a little bit more energy. It really depends on the scenario, but generally you want to keep it to like the morning time frame as much as you can if you're going to try a coffee enema, and just give yourself enough time. This is not something that you want to rush through. Like it needs to be kind of like set the mood, gentle process. You don't want to have to worry about to like rush out the door and go somewhere after. Another thing that can happen with it is you're probably going to feel yourself having the urge to go to the bathroom, maybe for a couple hours after that. And that's just the body's like process of slowly clearing things out a little bit. So maybe best to try it on a weekend when you don't have anything going on.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, by and large, we don't recommend coffee enemas more than once a week at the most. And the
Mm-hmm.
only exception would be during a full moon challenge, where we might make the exception and do it twice. However, it would also not be for someone brand new to coffee enemas. It would not be for someone brand new to parasite work. It would, it would be someone who's regularly doing this stuff. And we're going to add in one additional coffee enema, doing it twice in 1 week versus just once in 1 week. So yeah, great thing about coffee enemas. It's also one thing important to understand about coffee enemas is it's not really for clearing you out. Yes, it will do that because you're putting liquid into your body. And the coffee enema is really for your liver. And if you do a coffee enema properly, you should be rolling onto your right side after you are filled. And that's because that's going to help stimulating the coffee to go into your liver, which is going to help stimulate a higher amount of glutathione. It can also help with bile flow. It can help with bile duct health overall. So just some important things to kind of keep in mind with that as well. So let's dig in here, and we've mentioned some, but let's dig into a lot of the symptoms that people can experience while on this. And just like full disclosure, this can be pretty widespread. I've never gotten sick from a coffee enema or from a full moon protocol, and I definitely got sick because the full moon protocol triggered me getting sick with whatever sinus infection, head cold, whatever I got going on. It definitely, because I started feeling sick the day after I started the full moon protocol, and it got worse as I started to increase things. And, for me, like, this sickness also feels different. Usually when I start to feel like I'm getting sick, with my history of viral issues, I'm pretty on top of like supplements, zinc, vitamin C, rapid immune boost, L-lysine, like Virad Chem, just like other things to support my body. And I got a hard no, not to do any of that this time. And once again, like, I think this goes back to like, yes, I'm sick, and some of this was triggered by the full moon protocol. And I am doing rapid immune boost like once or twice a day. Usually I do it 4 times a day, just like for reference. And that is the only thing I am doing from like a supplement perspective to really help with this. So yes, you can get sick. No, it's not normal. I've never gotten sick before. And here we go. Something brand new.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I got sick one time doing a full moon challenge. It was a very intense one. And my body was also very heavily stressed out that month, which definitely played a role in how extreme my symptoms were. In general, though, I'm going to start with skin issues. So acne I feel like that's a pretty big one, is a symptom that can come up, and that's a pretty basic detox reaction too. We all have different ways that our body shows signs when we're detoxing. Acne is a pretty common one. If you deal with any sort of skin issues like, eczema, psoriasis, histamine responses, whatever, that's also a sign or a detox reaction. I've seen that happen before, just like rash flare-ups in general. Another really big one is nausea. I feel like that's something that comes with this. Being nauseous, your appetite's going to change. You're probably not going to be as hungry, maybe craving like warm liquid foods. That's pretty common throughout this, just because we're doing a lot of harsh work on the stomach. So we want to be gentle with it. Certainly try to eat. We don't want you to not eat. So try and get something in your body like bone broth, really great option, soups, stews. The other really big one is going to be general GI symptoms. So bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, whatever you lean towards. Those are going to be some really big symptoms. Brain fog, trouble sleeping, or maybe waking up at a certain time every night. That's also really big with this. What other ones, Megan?
Headaches, migraines, especially if you lean towards that, any sort of histamine. For me, when I actually thought I was just having a histamine reaction, and I thought I was like getting a little congested and having extra drainage going down my throat as part of a histamine reaction. I'm not completely ruling that out, and I'm definitely more than just a histamine reaction thing going on. With the skin stuff, for me, I'm one of those people where I detox through my skin, and it always shows up on my face. And I'd say, for me, this is a weird one. My face is actually pretty, and full disclosure, I am wearing some makeup right now. But usually I break out on my forehead and definitely like around my chin area. Or you may have if you are a female and you're getting your period around this time, things might get a little weird in a lot of different directions. PMS may be worse, cramping may be worse, period may be lighter or heavier. Really depends on the person. I'd say some people can get some dry mouth, kind of stuff going on. Drier skin, I have seen that. Definitely. And I'll say once again, this literally happened to me earlier today. You can feel a rush of anxiety, and almost like a flood of anxiety. For me, this wasn't coming up so much as mental emotional anxiety as it was extreme nausea. For lunch, I had bone broth, and a banana with some almond butter, because that's all I could handle. And I definitely thought the banana was coming back up. And then I had a bowel movement, and it subsided substantially. Not saying it's all gone, because I definitely still feel some nausea, and I definitely passed something. And whether you see things or not doesn't mean you're not passing things. Only about 30% of parasites are even visible to the eye. Some look like worms, some don't. And, I have a long history for probably a whole year. Every time I did a coffee enema, I had liver flukes come out. And they don't look like worms. Just that can happen. And if you notice, and this is really common, where you'll notice a rush of symptoms all of a sudden happen for a few hours or even whole day, and then you have a bowel movement, and then things kind of subside a little bit. And that's a really common sign that you just passed something. Once again, whether that was visible or not, I will say the last couple of days I've passed a couple of things that were visible to the eye. And so I recognized, with the increase in nausea, and then I had a bowel movement, and seeing that decrease, cool. Well, I just passed something. And that was contributing to more of my symptoms. So also, once again, being aware of that and not kind of like letting your body go through the process and take it easy as much as you can, staying really hydrated. Like for me, I am a coffee drinker. I usually have just 1 cup a day. I'm at a half a cup today, just like I had none yesterday. I had like a little one on Sunday, like just because it felt like too much for my body. Once again, I'm usually a pretty good eater, but I've only been able to stomach bone broth, and a banana for lunch the last 2 days. And just like, is that my ideal lunch? Absolutely not. And that's where my body is right now. And that's okay. I already told my partner, like, I'm probably going to crash here when I'm done with work here in the next little bit, and like being okay with that. And once again, like having that communication, like with people around you, and doing like some prep work, around food and having, maybe bone broth or having some like lighter, blander foods. I foresee myself having maybe like a little bit of chicken and rice for dinner. Because my appetite is like definitely still not there. So all these little things. I'll also say I'm really impacted by parasite work and my sleep. Like so much. So much. So I actually take my pair 1, pair 2, at different timings than we will often recommend, kind of like as a starting point. So usually we'll recommend it. It needs to be taken on empty, ideally away from food. It can be taken with other supplements except a binder. And I like to eat breakfast like almost as soon as I get up. So I don't take pair 1, pair 2 when I first wake up. I'll take it in between breakfast and lunch. And then I'll also take it between lunch and dinner, which once again, we'll often recommend it like before bed, a couple hours after you've eaten dinner. I will not sleep. I will be up for a couple hours at night, even with liver support, if I take pair 1, pair 2 at that time. So I just move it up, and that really makes a difference in my sleep. I also have another one of their products, KL support, which I had mentioned previously. I have that sitting by my bed. Anytime I'm doing parasite work, because if I wake up in that liver time, like that 1 to 2:30 kind of time frame, I'll pop 1 or 2 of those and I'll fall asleep within 20 minutes and be able to actually like fall back asleep. That's a little trick of the trade that you probably won't see most places that one of my old reps, for self-care taught me. But it's super, super helpful. We've used it with clients before. Big fan.
Yeah, that is a huge little small tip that I feel like, they don't talk about it on the Silkware website at all, but I've had that work for myself and for so many clients. So it is really good to have that one on hand as well. 2 other things I wanted to mention really quick when we talk about symptoms. It's also not uncommon to have some stomach pain when you're doing this type of work. And typically, once you have a bowel movement, the stomach pain will go away. But oftentimes, it's like there's a parasite right there. Maybe it's some other stuff mixed in with it. And the body is feeling that pain because it's ready to pass it in your stool and get it out. So just want people to be aware of that as well, because that's pretty common. A heating pad is something that can help with that. Epsom salt baths, even like a gentle like belly massage just to try and help stimulate things and pass the bowel movement. All that stuff can be really great to do when you're dealing with stomach pain.
Yeah, for sure. And I still experience that sometimes. And I like, once again, just like having the awareness of like, that's what it is, that there's something getting ready to move out of my body. It's okay. And it's very uncomfortable. And it's almost like you can feel like movement going on. And one of my clients describes it as like cuts, like it feels like little, like all in her intestines. And like, I know exactly what she means by that, because I remember that really well. And sometimes usually it's not bad for me anymore during parasite work, but yeah. And this is where making sure we're having regular bowel movements, like using that bowel mover as support if needed, can be really helpful. This is also why like liver support, as you continue to do like prep work, and then even still, during protocols, doing some of that stuff, doing extra liver support, whether that's through supplementation and or lifestyle things, can go a really, really long way.
Yeah, and I'm a person that, and I've only come across this with it, maybe 2 other people, where a bowel mover just sometimes doesn't move the needle for me, but Smooth Moves tea, which is a tea that's senna-based, that will move the needle. So I do want to recommend that too. It's Smooth Moves tea by Traditional Medicinals. Just like if you're a person who has maybe tried bowel mover before and you didn't see the benefits from it, that tea can be really, really great. There's also, this is one that we don't use often. It's called motility activator. That's in our full script. That's another option that you can try. I would think out of those three things, though, one of those things should move the needle. And another thing that I wanted to mention in regards to the emotional side of thing is it's also very common to have a wave of emotions after you pass a parasite. My first time doing parasite work, I passed some big stuff, and I remember I was just had the biggest sensation to just like cry after and have this like emotional release. That is also not uncommon. So just something else to be aware of throughout this.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll also say, just because I've had some people share this with me, that bowel mover did not work. And I'm not saying this is your case, Shannon, but I know other people who have done it, like some of the self-care work on their own. 1 to 2 capsules is kind of like the standard dose that is recommended. You can't high dose it. We've had clients over the years, 6-10 capsules a day. Now, we do not start there. That is an as needed as we're working on other things kind of situation. It's not a long-term thing. It should be short-term while we're working on the bigger pieces as to why do we need that many? And, and once again, like this is one of the reasons why we like a lot of the self-care products is you can low dose and high dose many of their products. And it is very, very safe to do so. And so this is where working with someone who is very familiar with certain products and protocols and isn't new to this work, there's a huge learning curve when it comes to most supplements in general. I say there's a huge learning curve when it comes to self-care. And we're both in, a variety of self-care groups and, people doing real low dose things and not seeing results. And it's because we need to higher dose things. And it largely depends on the person, what that really looks like. So just want to throw that out there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that we brought that up. And again, it's really tough to, I've also had I have clients currently that we're working with who have used some of the Cellcore stuff, but in like a completely different way than we're using it now and maybe didn't see results while they were using it. And again, that's why I know that we want to like take the leap and kind of just do some of this stuff on our own, which again, for some people, that's fine. And I think that's great. But for people who are dealing with more difficult issues or just seem to be struggling more, it really is so helpful to work with someone on this stuff just to help guide you through it, help make shifts and try different things when something isn't working. It's really helpful to have that guidance throughout the process.
Yeah. And look, these products are expensive. And this is a personal opinion. If I'm going to spend a bunch of money on something, like I want to make sure it works and I do it right. We also offer discounts to our clients for many products, including self-care products. And doing them on your own. I also have used self-care products with other practitioners, a variety of other practitioners who were new to self-care. And I did not find many of them super effective until I started really learning a lot of this myself and how to tailor protocols, signs and symptoms that were coming up, signs and symptoms that I needed to increase or decrease dosages or add in a different product. So I think that's all really valuable. I'll also, once again, we love self-care and they do not do a great job at the rebuilding process of the gut. And once again, this is a huge mistake that we see so many people make that please, 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 like one of the biggest favors you can do yourself is after doing any sort of killing work, full moon work, make sure you put the good stuff back in and help it grow, help it flourish, whether that's through food and or supplementation. Just like it makes a massive difference, especially long term.
Same thing goes for antibiotic use. If you're someone who's doing antibiotics, even if it's short, like 3 to 5 days, highly recommend doing at least a month of rebuilding work after that. Just like across the board, anytime you're doing killing, you want to go in and do rebuilding.
Yeah, Restore Flora is also available. They have a product called Restore Flora. I think it's PD that's
Yeah.
specifically designed for like post-antibiotic use. So,
Mhm.
and once again, it's pretty gentle, but also really good in broad spectrum. So if you're looking for a suggestion, that could be an option.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I feel like that's a failed, um, something that the holistic world doesn't do a super good job with is that rebuilding portion, which is why we are so adamant about talking about it, trying to share that with everyone and remind people how important it is, because it's different than healing and sealing the gut. That seems to be really popular in the holistic space, like slippery elm, marshmallow root, L-glutamine powder. All of those things are great and we like that, but they're not probiotics. We're not rebuilding, we're not diversifying. So just super important to add that pro and prebiotic portion in as well.
Yeah. So awesome. That is full moon work. That is specific parasite work around the full moon. And yeah, we'll try and put a little sample, maybe a beginner protocol in the show notes so that you guys
Yeah.
can kind of visually see what that looks like. Once again, if you need access to these products, please let us know. We have a few different options as to how you get access to that, whether that's working with us or not. But you do have to reach out to us. We cannot just like willy-nilly give out our patient code and things like that. From a legal perspective, we cannot do that. So never hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions. Obviously, we do free consults if you want to talk more about that and what that could look like for you specifically. So all of that is available and an option. And we hope you had a wonderful time around this full moon. And hope you have a great rest of your year here because we are nearing the end of December now. Hope you have great holidays and thank you for listening. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe. If it resonates, 5-star reviews mean so much to us. We really, really appreciate them. And we will see you next week.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.